Make sure you guys hit the subscribe button if you guys are enjoying the content that we're throwing up. And make sure you guys hit the like button if you enjoy the video. And yeah, let's begin. FYI, patrons, those of you guys who are patrons, make sure you check out the announcement post that I made on Patreon about the start of our next uncensored video series. I think you guys are really gonna like it. So it's the next uncensored series. It's gonna be on Patreon only, no holds barred. You'll probably hear me cussing. There'll definitely be like swear words and all kinds of stuff in the comic. Yeah, so like comics explained uncut, basically. That's how you guys are gonna see it. But in any event, we're finally getting back into Spawn Armageddon, right? And a lot of you guys really seem to enjoy it, which I'm really happy to see, right? Because I wasn't sure if you guys were really going to enjoy this series or not, but I'm glad you guys are, glad you guys love it, but we're kind of reaching the finality, right? Like we've got this video, and I think we've got one more, and then we're done with Spawn Armageddon, and then we go into the aftermath, because I guess we're gonna keep Spawn going. But in any event, if you guys wanna get caught up, I have a playlist for Spawn now, right? It has like the origins video, the origin of his character, the introduction of Angela, and then it goes directly into what we've covered so far. So you can get caught up quick, fast, and in a hurry with regards to the Mythos. Not a whole lot of videos. I think it's maybe like 3 or 4 videos up to this point. But in any event, we're kind of picking up here with really the aftermath of Wanda had basically, offed herself, because everything she's learned here has really just been too much to process, right? This idea that her twin children aren't really her twin children. Instead, they're basically God and Satan reborn in human form. Now, again, this really ties into the mother of all creation, which is to say the creator of the universe, this being that created all these various gods across the entirety of the universe for every civilization that exists out there. And of all the gods who were created, God and Satan are deemed to be failures, because instead of serving the role which was assigned to them, which is to say the traditional Judeo-Christian role, instead they basically just bicker amongst each other. And so in order to teach them what it meant to be human, the mother of all creation essentially sealed them away and then recreated their essences in human form, right? And that's where we kind of are right now. But the toll of Wanda learning that basically her children, her twin children, are God and Satan is far more than she can grasp. And so because of all that, with it being too much to handle and all this kind of really, coming to a head, Wanda ends up going into the bedroom, as we saw, and then grabbing the gun and turning it on herself. Now, where we ended the last video with the presumption that Wanda had died, instead, the mother of all creation froze time. And the reason why is because what this meant is it basically allowed the mother of all creation to address Spawn and to simply say, I understand how important she is to you, right? Because without her, you would lose your will to fight, and it's important that you fight. And so what this does is it allows Spawn to basically pull the bullet away and then to keep Wanda alive. And so again, this is kind of yet another instance on the stack of all these things that have made life ridiculously difficult for her. And so in response to that, of course, you have Terry, who's basically freaking out. The response to Spawn is do something, right? Do something to fix this and to make it right. And so as a result of that, what the mother of creation does is she basically wipes Wanda's mind of everything. Now, it's also told that she wipes the mind of Terry and Cyan. But what we're going to learn about Cyan is that that's not necessarily the case, right? Terry's kind of been made to forget about the twins, the fact that they were God and Satan and all that kind of stuff, and Wanda was as well. Presumably so was Cyan, but at this moment, it's really more of the role that Cyan is going to play. And the reason why is because what the mother of creation does is she basically leaves with Spawn. And what she tells him is that this role you're going to play in Armageddon, this final battle between God and Satan, is a war that you need to be prepared for. And at the moment, you are not. Cyan is going to be the person that's going to save you, right? She's going to be the one that's basically going to put you in a position to where you can win this war. And that's why we saw in the previous video, when the mother of all creation was more or less musing, as the man of miracles, the mother of all creation was saying, a child will save everyone. And that's exactly what this is. It's Cyan basically being the person who's going to guide Spawn to success. And the reason why this matters is because Spawn has to face off against the disciple. But in order to kind of create this bridge with Cyan, what he has to do is show her his true face, to show her what Spawn really is. And so ultimately he ends up visiting her and then basically kind of opens himself up and pours out this massive collection of insects, essentially saying like, I am a monster, right? I'm a monster of the worst kind. How you've seen me is not how I truly am. You have to see me at my absolute worst. And that's when, he's kind of, it's kind of like, it's only bugs, it's only bugs, it's only bugs. And the result is that she basically screams out, you're not a monster. And what this does is it solidifies the bond between Cyan and Al Simmons, that she genuinely and truly accepts him as he is. And that's what was needed. It's game theory. His success depends on the success of Cyan and truly accepting him for who he is. And so because of that, it's one of these things where essentially the enrapture has begun to start, right? Which is to say people being brought up to heaven and to serve God more or less. And it's kind of a funny thing because because what we get is this kind of monologue of sorts, where Cyan talks about what the rapture is, right? At least in terms of what her grandma had told her the rapture was about. Now, what I want to do here is I want to sidetrack for a second, and I want to have this conversation about Granny Blake, right? Because this is one of those themes that was kind of covered over the course of a lot of the Spawn comics leading up to this point. Now, Granny Blake is not the most significant character in the entire Spawn mythos, but she also kind of is. And the reason why is because she really served in a lot of ways as a kind of religious advisor for Spawn. Not insofar as saying like, here's what you need to do in order to win the favor of God and Satan, but whenever Spawn felt like he was kind of drifting off the path, or he was trying to reconcile his existence with the existence of like God and Satan and that kind of a thing, trying to figure out his place in all of this, Granny was the one that kind of guided him back. They basically said God and Satan are beings, and really kind of espoused the Judeo-Christian belief system of God and Satan, so on and so forth. Because of that, she was a character that like a lot of fans got attached to because of kind of like the emotional support that she offered. Now, eventually they kind of went their own way, but it was one of these things where Granny Blake was blind, right? So there was this kind of sort of supernatural essence about her in the sense that she could see things that other people couldn't normally see. And that's what created the sort of rapport between herself and Spawn. Now, eventually they kind of had a falling out. They really stopped communicating, different things like that. But this is why Granny is really kind of receiving a lot of emphasis here, right? Because in the eyes of Granny, she looked at the idea of heaven and hell and looked at it in the traditional Judeo-Christian place. She's going to a place where God truly loves her and different things along those lines. She'll be reunited with her husband. And that's how she sees it here, right? As she's making her way from Earth, her spiritual essence, or I guess her physical form, is leaving Earth, as part of the rapture, and then entering into heaven. She's reunited with Jack, her former husband who died. She basically kind of takes on this appearance of her being her younger, beautiful self. And of course, she's kind of there looking at like God and so on and so forth. Now, this is all really given to us as kind of like the monologue of Cyan, right? In terms of, this is what Granny always told me God, heaven was going to be like, right? And so it's kind of like, Granny's perception of what heaven should be. The reality is anything but, right? As soon as she gets there and she passes through the pearly gates, there's no Jack there, right? There's no, heavenly choir of angels singing, and welcome to heaven, and all that kind of stuff. There's none of that stuff, right? Nobody from her past life that she knew who's there waiting on her or anything like that. There's simply just God as the child. And with Granny being unable to see what's really going on, God basically says, then let me return your sight to you. He gives her eyesight back, and when she sees what's up, what she sees is this enormous army that's being formed, right? The seraphim of God, Zara basically leading them, all these various soldiers who are there, and all these humans who are there who have no clue what's going on, right? Because heaven as it exists is not what they've been led to believe. And that's kind of the crushing sensation of it all, is nothing is what they thought it would be. And that's really what Granny says, this is not what heaven is supposed to be. Heaven is supposed to be like God loves us, and it's supposed to be the pearly gates, and it's supposed to be happiness everlasting, and what is this twisted and screwed up place? And that's when God kind of chimes in of like, okay, so like there's what you've been told, and then there's what it really is, right? Like I'm like the vengeful guy, right? Like I'm the guy, great vengeance and like tearing things up and punishing the wicked, that's my kind of thing, right? And so as a result of this, God's like, you all have been brought here because I need an army, because like we're gonna go to war with hell, and I kind of need an army, so like you've been conscripted, and basically rematerializes all these humans here into his heavenly soldiers. And so following that, what you end up doing is you end up jumping to Spawn, picking up with the mother of creation, and essentially going to face off against the disciple. Now, one thing to understand, this is not the first time that Spawn and the disciple have met each other. And in fact, they met each other during Spawn issue number 50, where the disciple took out Spawn quick, fast, and in a hurry. The big indication there is that the reason why Spawn lost is because, one, he didn't really have the ability to tap into the 6,000 souls who were part of his body, but also because it was him just fighting on his own. Whereas here, he also has the belief of Cyan kind of backing him, right? Somebody who has faith in him. Now, the reason why this is taking place is because when this battle concludes, if Spawn passes this test, then Spawn will prove himself worthy of the power of the mother of creation, right? Not insofar as he will become the mother of creation, but insofar as Spawn will become a god, which is to say divine Spawn, as a lot of you guys probably know him, right? Spawn with the angel or with the wings and all that kind of stuff. So with that being the case, and Cyan kind of backing him, when he goes to face off against the disciple, it's kind of a tough battle at first, but after that, after a while, Spawn starts to get the upper hand on the disciple. Now, one thing I want you to notice here is that on this guy's head, he basically has the Roman numeral for 12, and there's a reason for that, right? Spawn gets the upper hand on this guy, takes him out pretty quickly, and then kind of comments, it should not be this easy, humanity, right? And that's what he was warned about. The mother of creation said, much like you, the disciple is more than what he seems. So be aware of that. When this version of disciple is defeated, then suddenly disciple 11 pops up. And what disciple 11 says is, the person you fought before was James the Less, right? He was the weakest of all of us. Now you're fighting me. I'm Simon Peter the Rock. And so what this does is it allows, with the help of Cyan, who's really kind of engaging in this battle, almost in kind of like a video game situation, it allows some of the souls of Spawn to emerge and basically face off against these other disciples, while Spawn really seems to kind of go for the main prize. Now, the other part of this is that what you have is the return of the timer, the countdown timer. Now, this is old hat in a lot of ways. The timer was originally part of the Spawn mythos when it first came up, right? And the idea that Spawn only had a finite amount of energy, and when that energy ran down to zero, that basically Spawn would more or less die. Now, in this instance, the timer is much lower than it was before, and so if you guys are familiar with video games, this is in effect a boss battle, is basically what this is, right? And it's cool. It's a really, really cool depiction of this whole thing. But Spawn facing off against these various disciples and ultimately overcoming them all in almost kind of like a montage fashion, right? Like overcoming each one of these guys basically leads him to facing off against the final disciple. This is Judas Iscariot. Now, Judas Iscariot in Judeo-Christianity was the guy who sold out Jesus for 30 pieces of silver. What we're going to find out here is that in terms of the Spawn mythos, there was a lot more to it than that. But Spawn fighting against Judas Iscariot proves to be exceedingly difficult, right? He is wildly powerful. And so it's interesting because what Spawn was told is that in the beginning, you have to put your trust in Cyan. Cyan knows what she's doing. Trust her. No matter what she tells you, believe in what she tells you. And so as his power begins to sort of dwindle down, as his power begins to die off, that eventually Cyan comes to the realization that he has to sacrifice himself. Where Spawn goes in for the kill, the response to Cyan is, no, you have to stop. Do not kill him. Let him kill you instead. Let him destroy you. And initially Spawn's reaction is, no, that's kind of ridiculous. That doesn't make any sense, right? Like, I have to pass the test. I have to prove how powerful I am by taking out these various disciples. And the response of Cyan is, no, don't do that. Basically let this guy win. At the same time that all that's happening, the Armageddon is officially beginning, right? The whole end of times is officially starting, as it does, at least according to the book of Rapture, which is with the massive earthquake that basically shakes the world, right? And begins the process of like the coming of the four horsemen and the bowls of God's wrath and the sounding of the trumpets and all that kind of stuff. It begins here. And so the result is that taking this moment, doing exactly what it is it is supposed to do, the disciple essentially impales Spawn and kills Spawn. If that's correct, which it is, what this means is that Spawn has officially passed the test. And what this means is that going forward, Spawn will achieve the power of all creation, right? Spawn is now elevated to the power of a god. With that being said, guys, we're going to bring this video to an end. If you are new here to Comics Explained, make sure you guys hit the sub button to become part of the Rob Corps. If you guys enjoy this video, make sure you drop a like, and I will catch you all later. Peace. I want to say thank you to all of the new patrons who have joined patreon.com/comicsexplained. I want to give a shout out to Henry, Young Typhon, Elias G, David J.S., Jacob H, Ben, John H, Jason C, Austin S, Austin H, James O, Chris T, Matt N, Jeff R, Joey M, Steven Z, Sloth Like Lou, David C, John H, Lean and Mean. That guy asks questions all the time. Adam K, Genosis 916. I want to say thank you to all of you all. This list is growing all the time. Thank you for joining the Patreon.